Earth was classified as a death world. Humans thrived. HFY Sci-Fi. My name is High Examiner Kral Vesh, Senior Xenobiological Assessor of the Concordat Union. I have served for 212 cycles. I have catalogued worlds that boiled their oceans away. I have overseen simulations where entire species failed within the first generation. I have watched empires fall not to invasion, but to environments they could not adapt to. I know death worlds. They are chaotic, wasteful, evolutionary traps that produce brutality instead of progress. Which is why Earth was easy to classify. High gravity, volatile climate, tectonic instability, atmosphere rich in corrosive oxygen. A planet where predators evolved faster than prey. Where storms erased cities. Where extinction events were not anomalies, but milestones. Death World, Class 4. That designation should have been the end of the discussion. Civilizations born on such planets either destroy themselves early or stagnate under constant survival pressure. They do not thrive. They do not innovate. They do not reach the stars in any meaningful way. That was the doctrine. So when the Union approved a cultural and biological exchange, and a human was sent to our evaluation academy, I expected exactly what the data predicted. Fragility, overcompensation, fear hidden behind noise. I expected a species permanently on edge, carrying the psychological scars of a world that never stopped trying to kill it. Instead, they sent one human, unarmored, unmodified, carrying no visible defensive systems. The file listed her as an environmental systems specialist, not military, not diplomatic. A technical observer. An odd choice. Humans were still new to interstellar society. Their history showed violence, yes, but also emotional volatility. They should have been cautious here. Respectful. Nervous. She wasn't. She walked into the academy atrium like someone arriving for a routine lecture. Her posture was relaxed. Her movements economical. She glanced up at the reinforced ceiling, rated to withstand seismic collapse, and nodded approvingly. Well built, she said. This would have helped back home. Back home. I assumed she meant metaphorically. I addressed her formally, outlining the risks of the station, the environmental controls, the safety protocols in place to protect off-world species. She listened politely. Then she asked if the gravity could be increased slightly. Increased. I reminded her that standard Concordat gravity was calibrated for maximum cross-species comfort. Raising it would cause strain, possibly injury. She smiled faintly. Oh, she said, that's okay. I sleep better with more weight. That was the first crack in my certainty. Over the next few hours, she passed through assessments that had broken other candidates. Atmospheric variations. Pressure shifts. Environmental stress simulations designed to test resilience. Her biometrics barely moved. No panic response. No elevated stress markers. No degradation in performance. She treated each scenario like familiar terrain. Not challenging. Familiar. I began pulling deeper data. Historical Earth records, evolutionary timelines, extinction charts. Mass die-offs. Ice ages. Asteroid impacts. Supervolcanoes. Earth had tried to erase life repeatedly. Life had responded by becoming relentless. And humans were the product of that bargain. Suddenly, her calm made sense. This was not confidence. This was normalization. The academy was not dangerous to her. It was controlled. Predictable. And standing there, watching a human adapt effortlessly to conditions that strained veteran species, I felt something I had not felt in decades. Because if this was how humans behaved away from their death world, I did not want to imagine what they were like on it. I looked at her again, at the unremarkable human who had already adjusted to our most extreme environments, and the final realization settled into place. My classification had not been wrong. Earth was a death world. But I had misunderstood the conclusion. The planet was deadly. The humans were not. I was wrong. The human was physically unimpressive. That was my second conclusion, reached less than a minute after the first. She stood at the center of the evaluation chamber, waiting while my assistants calibrated the environmental controls, and nothing about her suggested threat. No height advantage. No dense musculature. No protective plating or hardened dermal layers common among species that evolved under constant danger. 2 arms. Soft skin. Exposed joints. Her skeletal structure was light by concordat standards. Her mass distribution inefficient. Her center of gravity high enough that a moderate impact should have knocked her flat. There were no visible implants, no neural ports, no augmentations humming beneath the surface. By our metrics, she was fragile. Her name, according to the intake record, was Dr. Hannah Ward, a xenobiology liaison. Not a soldier. Not an explorer. Not even a professional survivalist. A researcher. She wore a simple field uniform, fabric, flexible, clearly designed for comfort rather than protection. The kind of attire junior analysts wore during controlled lab work. If she had been placed beside one of our hardened frontier operatives, the contrast would have been embarrassing. She looked like she belonged in a classroom. Or a cafeteria. Not in an evaluation facility rated for Class 4 planetary simulations. Her posture was relaxed to the point of disrespect. 1 foot slightly forward, weight resting unevenly, shoulders loose. She clasped her hands behind her back not in discipline, but in patience, as if waiting for a lecture to begin. She yawned. Quietly. Reflexively. Then covered her mouth with 2 fingers and murmured an apology. Sorry, she said. Long transit. I checked the chamber readings again. Gravity set to concordat standard. Atmospheric mix optimized to prevent oxygen toxicity. Temperature neutral. This environment had induced nausea, tremors, and disorientation in multiple visiting specialists over the years. Dr. Ward looked comfortable. Her eyes drifted lazily around the chamber, lingering on the reinforced walls, the pressure seals, the emergency bulkheads. She nodded occasionally, as if mentally checking items off a list. At one point she tapped the floor lightly with the toe of her boot. Huh, she said. You guys dampen vibration really well. That comment startled one of my assistants. I ignored it. I had seen overconfidence before. New species often mistook unfamiliarity for bravery. They assumed the danger was exaggerated. That realization usually came later, after the first stress response. So we began with observation only. No challenges. No simulations. Just baseline exposure. Her biometric data streamed across my display. Heart rate, stable. Respiration, even. Hormonal stress indicators, minimal. Impossible. I leaned forward slightly, studying her more carefully. Her skin showed faint markings, old scars, poorly concealed. Not surgical. Not ceremonial. Random. Imperfect. The kind accumulated over time through repeated minor injuries. Not the scars of war. The scars of living somewhere unsafe. She noticed my attention and offered a small, polite smile. Everything okay? She asked. The question was genuine. Not defensive. Not challenging. She was not performing. She was simply present. I asked her if she required any accommodations before the evaluation began. She considered the question seriously. Do you have anything heavier? She asked, nodding at the gravity controls. The floor feels a bit floaty. Floaty, I explained, again, that concordat gravity was carefully calibrated. Increasing it might strain her musculoskeletal system. She shrugged lightly. If you say so, she replied. Just figured I'd ask. No disappointment. No insistence. She returned to waiting. That was what unsettled me most. She wasn't bracing herself. She wasn't psyching herself up. She wasn't displaying the false confidence of someone hiding fear. She was waiting because, to her, nothing had started yet. I reviewed her background while she stood there. Education on Earth. Field research in multiple extreme environments. Long-term assignments in locations flagged as hazardous even by human standards. Deserts. Polar regions. High-altitude zones with thin air and crushing pressure differentials. Why send this human? Why not a hardened survival specialist? A military advisor? An explorer? Why send someone who looked like they belonged behind a desk? The answer did not occur to me yet. She shifted her weight again, rolled her neck once, and glanced at the sealed observation window. "You guys always watch from up there?" she asked casually. "Yes," I replied. "For safety." She nodded. "Makes sense." Then she waited some more. Minutes passed. The chamber hummed softly as systems reached equilibrium. Her patience never faltered. She did not fidget, did not pace, did not display anticipation or dread. This was not someone facing danger. This was someone waiting for a routine procedure to begin. I began to understand something uncomfortable. Humans did not evaluate environments the way we did. Where we saw risk thresholds, they saw tolerances. Where we saw hazard indicators, they saw background conditions. This chamber, our most controlled, most carefully regulated test space, was still gentler than the world she came from. To her, this place was not threatening. It was quiet, predictable. She glanced at her wrist chronometer and smiled faintly. "Whenever you're ready," she said. "No rush. No rush." Standing on a station built to simulate death worlds. Unarmored, unimpressed, unconcerned. I had expected tension. I had expected weakness hidden behind bravado. What I was seeing instead was far worse. A human who did not look dangerous, because danger had never needed to announce itself to her. And for the first time since I began my career classifying worlds and species, I felt the edge of something unfamiliar. Not fear. Recognition. If this was what a harmless human looked like away from Earth, then the mistake was not in Earth's classification. It was in assuming that a death world produces fragile survivors. We began with a minor test. That was the phrase used in the protocol. Minor. A controlled stress exposure designed to elicit measurable reactions without causing lasting harm. It was the same opening assessment we used on every visiting specialist from marginal worlds. Enough pressure to reveal limits. Enough discomfort to expose fear. I authorized environmental phase 1. Gravity increased by 12%. Atmospheric pressure fluctuated unpredictably within safe margins. Temperature dropped sharply, then climbed again, mimicking the instability common to Class 4 worlds. It was nothing dramatic. By Concordat standards, it was generous. The last candidate subjected to this test, a decorated Kethrian survival officer with reinforced joints and adaptive lungs, had collapsed to one knee within 30 seconds. His equilibrium failed. His respiration spiked. He required medical intervention before the full cycle completed. Another, a veteran explorer from the Viral Collective, had vomited and lost consciousness outright. Both had been trained. Both had known what was coming. Dr. Hannah Ward did not react. The gravity shift registered. I saw it in the data. The atmospheric oscillation followed seconds later. Pressure waves rippled through the chamber floor, subtle but present. She adjusted her footing slightly. That was all. No stagger. No gasp. No visible effort. She glanced down at the floor, then up at the ceiling vents as the temperature dipped. "Oh," she said. Cold snap. She rubbed her hands together once, not frantically, just reflexively, then relaxed again. I frowned and signaled my assistants to continue. Phase 1 completed without incident. Her biometrics showed mild exertion, nothing more. That should have been impossible. I escalated to Phase 2. Gravity increased again, now well beyond Concordat comfort thresholds. Atmospheric composition shifted toward a denser mix, still non-lethal but heavy enough to strain most respiratory systems. The floor plates began microvibrations designed to disrupt balance and orientation. This phase had injured elite candidates. Bone stress fractures, ligament tears, neural disorientation. I watched closely. Dr. Ward swayed once as the vibration pattern changed, then took a half step to compensate. Her breathing deepened, not erratic, not panicked, just more deliberate. She exhaled slowly. "Okay," she murmured. "That's a bit more noticeable." Noticeable. She looked up toward the observation window. "Quick question," she said conversationally. "How long does this part usually last?" I hesitated before answering. 3 minutes, I said. She nodded. Just wanted to pace it. Pace it. I felt irritation stir. This was not how candidates behaved. This was not how organisms reacted when their environment turned hostile. She was not enduring the test. She was managing it. The vibrations intensified. One of my assistants whispered urgently that her balance metrics should have failed by now. They hadn't. Dr. Ward shifted her weight again, rolling through the motion with practiced ease, knees flexing to absorb the oscillations. She looked bored. Actually bored. Her eyes drifted to a corner of the chamber where condensation had formed along a seal. "Huh," she said. "You've got a pressure leak there." I snapped my attention to the diagnostic feed. She was correct. A minor one, but real. "How did you?" I began. She shrugged, still balancing effortlessly. "Back home, if you ignore that sound long enough, something explodes," she said lightly. Explodes. I terminated phase too early. Not out of mercy. Out of confusion. The chamber stabilized. Gravity normalized. Atmospheric pressure evened out. The vibrations ceased. Dr. Ward straightened, rolled her shoulders once, and exhaled. "Okay," she said. "That wasn't too bad." Too bad. I felt my certainty slipping. We moved to phase 3, a final warning test. This one was psychological. Simulated environmental failure. Warning klaxons. Emergency lighting. A projected cascade of system errors indicating imminent containment breach. Candidates were not told it was simulated. The point was to observe instinctive responses. Fear, flight, freeze. The alarms began. Red lights flashed. Klaxons howled. The chamber displays filled with cascading failure alerts. Dr. Ward blinked. Then she squinted at one of the readouts. "Oh," she said. "You're running a false positive cascade." My assistant looked at me in disbelief. She walked over to the nearest console as if alarms were not screaming around her and leaned in to examine the projected data. "You see here," she continued, pointing casually, "this feedback loop? That wouldn't actually cause a breach. It would just trip the safety system." She glanced up. "Unless you've got something else queued." I terminated the simulation. Silence fell abruptly, broken only by the soft hum of stabilized systems. Dr. Ward straightened and looked around. "So," she asked, genuinely curious, "was that the first test?" I stared at her. "That was designed to induce panic," I said. She frowned slightly. "Oh," she replied. "Sorry. Should I have reacted more?" She thought for a moment. "Do you want me to scream next time?" she offered. "I can do that if it helps your data." My assistant stared openly now. I felt a strange heat creep into my chest, not anger, not fear. Disorientation. "You were supposed to feel threatened," I said. She tilted her head. "Why?" she asked. The question was simple. It dismantled everything. I searched for an answer and found none that applied to her. She gestured vaguely around the chamber. "Look," she said, "no offense, but this place is really well controlled. Redundant systems. Clear alerts. Predictable patterns." She smiled faintly. "Back home, when something goes wrong, it doesn't warn you." I thought of Earth's data again. Storms. Twigs. Predators. Disease. No alarms. No safety cutoffs. Just consequences. Dr. Ward glanced at the chronometer again. "Am I early?" she asked. "Or is this supposed to get harder later?" Harder. I realized then that we had not tested her limits. We had tested our assumptions. And they were failing. Because the first threat we had presented, the one that injured elites, that broke veterans, that triggered panic across species, had been received by the human not as danger, but as a warm-up. She looked at me, patient, expectant. "Should I be worried?" she asked politely. The question was not rhetorical. She genuinely wanted to know. And standing there, watching a human wait calmly in a chamber built to simulate death worlds, I felt the first true tremor of doubt ripple through my confidence. Because if this was how humans reacted to their first threat, I had no idea what it would take to make them afraid. Annoyance is not an emotion I tolerate well. It crept in quietly, disguised as irritation, then hardened into something far more dangerous, certainty that I was being challenged. Not physically, but ideologically. The human's calm was not merely disruptive, It was insulting. It suggested that our assessments, our protocols, our entire framework for understanding survivability were insufficient. I could not allow that. So I escalated. Not out of anger, I told myself. Out of professionalism. I authorized Environmental Phase 4, a level never used on exchange candidates. Protocol dictated this phase only for hardened operatives undergoing final evaluation before Death World deployment. Survival was not expected. Survival was exceptional. Gravity increased sharply, pushing beyond the limits deemed safe for most concordat species. Structural supports reinforced themselves automatically as the floor groaned under the strain. Atmospheric density rose, thick and heavy, pressing against lungs and joints alike. The temperature spiked, then plunged, cycling violently to induce shock. By doctrine, this should have ended the evaluation. The human should have collapsed. Dr. Hannah Ward did not. She inhaled slowly, deeply. Her posture shifted, not in panic, but in adjustment. Feet planted wider. Knees bent just enough to compensate. Her shoulders rolled back as if easing into resistance rather than fighting it. She looked thoughtful. I watched her biometrics spike at last, heart rate rising, muscle strain registering, but still nowhere near failure thresholds. Pain markers appeared, then stabilized. She was hurting, but she was functional. I felt my mandibles tighten. This environment is no longer safe, I announced. You may withdraw. She looked up at the observation window. Withdraw. She considered the word. Then she shook her head. No, she said calmly. I'm okay. The chamber shuddered as the gravity ticked higher. A Kethrian operative would have suffered skeletal failure by now. A virile explorer would have lost consciousness. Even my own species would have required neural dampeners to remain upright. Dr. Ward leaned forward slightly, placing her hands on her thighs, not to brace, but to rest. Wow, she said softly. This feels like mid-range. Mid-range. I cut my claws into the armrest of my chair. She straightened again, breathing controlled, deliberate. Sweat beaded along her brow, not fear sweat, not panic sweat. Exertion. Effort. But still no fear. I ordered Phase 5. The chamber's holographic projectors activated, overlaying the physical environment with simulated hazards, tectonic ruptures, atmospheric fires, structural collapse warnings. The floor split visually, showing molten depths below. The ceiling projection flickered with storm systems and falling debris. Candidates exposed to Phase 5 typically broke psychologically even before physical failure. Dr. Ward squinted. Okay, she said. That's new. She took a cautious step forward. Not back. Forward, toward the projected rupture. She crouched, placing a hand just above the holographic seam. You know, she said conversationally, this looks a lot like the San Andreas simulations we run. Yours is cleaner, though. Less noise in the data. I stared. You are standing inside a projected planetary failure, I said. This represents certain death. She glanced back at me. Only if it's real, she replied. And if it is, standing still wouldn't help anyway. She stood up again, dusted her hands on her uniform, and waited. Waited. I realized then that escalation, to her, was not intimidation. It was information. Each new threat was something she assessed, contextualized, and filed away. She was not overwhelmed. She was learning. That realization struck my ego like a blade. I authorized Phase 6. Emergency override. The chamber's safety governors disengaged. Real environmental force replaced simulation. Localized gravity wells formed, uneven and crushing. Wind systems roared to life, hurling debris across the chamber. Heat surged from below, real this time, blistering. Protocol dictated certain death. My assistants protested. I silenced them. Dr. Ward staggered for the first time. Just once. She caught herself on one knee, breathing hard now, chest rising and falling with effort. Her face tightened, not in fear, but concentration. I leaned forward, certain at last. This was it. Then she stood back up. Slowly. Deliberately. She wiped sweat from her eyes and looked around, evaluating. Okay, she said, voice slightly strained but steady. Now we're getting somewhere. Somewhere. She took a step forward into a gravity pocket that should have crushed her flat. Her movement slowed, but did not stop. Muscles trembled. Bones protested. She kept moving. I felt something fracture inside me. She reached the center of the chamber and stood there, under forces calibrated to kill. Not screaming. Not pleading. Not defiant. Focused. Alive. She looked up at the observation window again. You know, she said between measured breaths, if you wanted to see panic, you probably should have skipped straight to unpredictability. I demanded to know what she meant. She smiled faintly. This is all very structured, she explained. Clear phases. Gradual escalation. You tell me what's coming next. She gestured weakly at the chamber. Back home, the scary stuff is when nothing makes sense. The words hit harder than any data. Because she was right. We escalated by rules. By doctrine. By expectation. And humans thrived in the absence of those things. I finally terminated the phase. The chamber stabilized. Gravity eased. Wind died. Heat receded. Dr. Ward exhaled and leaned forward, hands on her knees, catching her breath. Then she straightened. Thanks, she said sincerely. That was actually pretty helpful. Helpful. I slumped back into my chair, my arrogance bleeding out into something colder and more dangerous. This was no longer about classification, no longer about Earth. This was about me, about the horrifying realization that everything I considered extreme was merely practice to a species born on a world that never stopped escalating. And the human, standing calmly in the aftermath of what should have been her death, proved one unbearable truth. I had escalated to assert dominance. She had endured to stay comfortable. And in doing so, she had crossed every threshold I believed mattered, without ever once appearing afraid. There was only one option left. I had exhausted environmental escalation. Gravity. Pressure. Chaos. All of it had failed to do more than inconvenience the human. My authority, my certainty, was fraying. So I did what examiners throughout history had always done when theory failed. I reached for finality. I authorized the absolute compliance demonstration weapon. The name itself was propaganda. Among examiners, we called it by its informal designation, the Ender. It was not designed to test adaptability or resilience. It was designed to end variables. A focused annihilation system. No warning tones. No gradual escalation. No survival curve. The weapon fired a condensed gravitic lance wrapped in a relativistic energy sheath, an instrument meant to overwhelm biology, technology, and physics simultaneously. It crushed molecular bonds before heat could register, erased neural activity before pain could exist. We used it once during a classified mutiny suppression. Nothing survived. Protocol dictated that firing it within a station chamber required unanimous oversight approval. I overrode the requirement. The chamber lights dimmed as power rerouted. The air vibrated, not audibly, but existentially, as if the space itself had been informed that it was about to be violated. Dr. Hannah Ward stood at the center of the chamber. Unarmed. Unshielded. Still catching her breath from the previous phase. I did not warn her. I did not announce the escalation. I fired. The weapon discharged with no sound, only a sudden absence of noise, as if the universe inhaled sharply. Sensors screamed. Data lagged. The lance crossed the chamber faster than perception could track. It should have killed her. Vaporized her. Erased her. There should have been nothing left but a scorched imprint and a hole burned through the deck plating. Instead, she moved. Not fast. Not dramatically. She raised her arm. One arm. Her hand met the gravitic lance mid-flight. And the weapon stopped. It did not explode. Did not deflect. Did not disperse. It stopped, like a thrown object caught midair. The energy sheath collapsed inward, spiraling around her fingers in a cascade of dying light. The gravitic compression bled off into the chamber walls, rattling the structure but leaving her untouched. The weapon died. In her hand. The chamber fell silent. My vision tunneled. Every sensory feed contradicted the last. The data made no sense. Force absorption readings off the scale, structural integrity unbroken, biological markers still stable. Dr. Ward looked down at her hand. She flexed her fingers once. Winced. Okay, she said thoughtfully. Yeah. That one almost hurt. Almost. She shook her hand lightly as if easing stiffness from her joints, then looked up at the observation window. Was that the big one? She asked. I could not speak. She rotated her shoulder once, then examined the faint shimmer of residual energy dissipating around her skin. You know, she continued conversationally, you're dumping too much force all at once. That works great if your target's fragile. She glanced around the chamber. But if they're used to compression, impact, and sudden failure, it just turns into noise. Noise. She took a step forward. My assistants recoiled instinctively. She stopped just short of the barrier separating us, close enough that I could see the fine tremor in her muscles. Not fear, not shock. Adrenaline settling. Exertion. Human exertion. You really should have aimed lower, she added mildly. Center mass assumes vulnerability. She tapped her chest once, then gestured to her legs. Weight-bearing structures tell you more. She smiled, small, polite, almost apologetic. Is that all? The words were not a challenge. They were an assessment. I realized then what had truly happened. The weapon had not failed. It had performed exactly as designed. The failure was conceptual. We had built weapons to overcome environments. Humans were built by one. Earth's gravity had crushed them into strength. Its atmosphere had forced efficiency into their lungs. Its predators had demanded awareness, endurance, and violence in equal measure. What we considered an ultimate weapon was simply a familiar category of stress. I felt my confidence collapse. The chamber systems began to recover, lights brightening as power redistributed. Warning indicators flooded the displays, screaming about unauthorized escalation, structural strain, ethical violation. None of it mattered. Dr. Ward took a step back, giving the barrier space. No hard feelings, she said kindly. I get why you tried it. Tried it. She rolled her neck once, clearly loosening tension. Back home, she added, we do stuff like this to test equipment. Or buildings. Or vehicles. She met my gaze. Not people. The distinction was devastating. I had attempted execution. She had experienced evaluation. And in that moment, staring at a human who had just survived a weapon designed to end civilizations, I understood the truth too late. Earth was not deadly because it was hostile. It was deadly because it was honest. It did not scale threats gradually. It did not warn. It did not care. And humanity had been forged in that indifference. Dr. Ward stepped away from the center of the chamber, posture relaxed once more. So, she said casually, what's next? There was nothing left. No higher escalation. No stronger weapon. No harsher test. I had reached the absolute limit of what my species could conceive. And the human was still standing. Still calm. Still waiting. The impossible moment was not that she survived. It was that she treated survival as expected. And as I stared at the data scrolling uselessly across my displays, one terrifying realization settled into place. This had not been a demonstration of human power. It had been a demonstration of human normal. And the galaxy was nowhere near ready for that. My hands trembled. Not from fear, at least not at first, but from overload. Too much data arriving too fast, too many assumptions collapsing at once. I closed my claws into fists, forcing stillness, and pulled every available feed onto my console. I needed numbers. I needed something solid. Because what I had just witnessed could not exist without explanation. I began with the planet. Gravity, 1.21 standard. Not slightly higher. Not marginally uncomfortable. Constant, relentless downward force that never eased. Every step a weighted decision. Every movement trained under pressure. Most species required exoskeletal support above 1.05. Humans were born into 1.21 and called it normal. Atmosphere, oxygen-rich to the point of toxicity by Concordat medical standards. Reactive. Corrosive. A gas mix that accelerated cellular damage and combustion. Long-term exposure should have shortened lifespans. Instead, humans adapted by repairing themselves faster. They evolved redundancy, regeneration, pain tolerance. I swallowed and continued. Climate, violently unstable. Ice ages. Superstorms. Heat waves capable of killing unprotected organisms in minutes. Cold that froze tissue solid. Earth did not offer equilibrium. It offered contrast. And humans survived by learning to function across extremes. I pulled ecological data. Predators, everywhere. Not apex singularities, but pack hunters. Coordinated. Intelligent. Persistent. Predators that learned patterns, exploited weakness, and tested defenses repeatedly. On Earth, danger did not announce itself with size. It watched. Waited. Adapted. So humans adapted back. They learned endurance instead of dominance. Awareness instead of armor. Cooperation instead of solitary strength. I scrolled further. Natural disasters. Earthquakes that split cities. Volcanoes that darkened skies. Floods that erased entire regions. Impacts from space that reset the evolutionary clock. Extinction was not hypothetical. It was historical. Repeated. Normal. And yet, humanity persisted. I felt my certainty unravel thread by thread. We classified death worlds as failures. Planets too hostile to support stable intelligence. But Earth had done something else. It had trained its dominant species. Not deliberately. Not kindly. Relentlessly. I looked back at the biometric data from Dr. Hannah Ward. Her stress responses during the weapon strike. The microfractures that did not propagate. The muscle recruitment patterns that compensated instantly. She had not resisted the force. She had distributed it. Her body reacted the way reinforced structures reacted under load. Absorbing, redirecting, surviving. That was not training. That was baseline. Humans were not exceptional. That was the mistake. We kept searching for uniqueness. For augmentation. For secret enhancements. There were none. They were simply adapted to a planet that punished anything less. I leaned back, my confidence now a hollow shell. Earth was not deadly because it wanted to be. Earth was deadly because it was indifferent. It did not negotiate. It did not scale difficulty. It did not stop escalating. And humans had evolved in that environment without pause. Every generation survived not by avoiding danger, but by normalizing it. What we called extreme, they called background noise. What we engineered weapons to replicate, their planet delivered daily. High gravity had made them dense. Unstable terrain had made them balanced. Predators had made them alert. Disasters had made them pragmatic. Even their psychology reflected it. They joked under pressure. They planned for failure. They treated catastrophe as a variable, not an endpoint. I reviewed cultural data next. Humans told stories not about safety, but about survival. They celebrated endurance. They admired persistence more than perfection. Their heroes did not avoid danger. They endured it. I thought of Dr. Ward's calm voice after the weapon strike. That one almost hurt. Almost. Not denial. Not bravado. Calibration. She had felt pain, assessed it, and moved on. Because pain was not new. It was familiar. I understood then why escalation had failed. We believed increasing force would inspire fear. But fear requires unfamiliarity. And nothing we had shown her was unfamiliar enough. Because Earth had already shown her worse. Not once. Not dramatically. But over a lifetime. I felt something cold settle into my core. Humans did not thrive despite Earth being a death world. They thrived because it was. The planet had stripped away fragility over millions of years. Left behind organisms that did not expect safety. Did not assume fairness. Did not panic when systems failed. They adapted. Again and again. I looked at the chamber once more. The reinforced walls, the safety systems, the protocols I had trusted my entire career. All of it suddenly felt artificial. Sheltered. I imagined Dr. Ward back on Earth. unprotected by controlled environments, unwarned by alarms, surrounded by a world that could kill her without intent or notice. And I understood something terrifying. What we had tested was not her limit. It was her comfort zone. She was calm not because she was fearless. She was calm because this was still safer than home. My hands stopped trembling. Not because the truth was comforting, but because it was complete. Earth was a death world. That classification was correct. But the conclusion we had drawn from it was catastrophically wrong. Death worlds do not produce weak survivors. They produce organisms that assume the universe is hostile and plan accordingly. Humans were not exceptional. They were not enhanced. They were not aberrations. They were optimized. And the galaxy, built on moderation and safety margins, had just met a species whose baseline existence exceeded our maximum threat models. I closed the data feed slowly. In the silence of the control chamber, with the echo of impossible survival still fresh in my mind, the final realization crystallized with terrifying clarity. We had not evaluated a dangerous species. We had evaluated a species for whom danger was simply life. And we were profoundly unprepared for that. That was when I understood. Not during the weapon discharge. Not when the data shattered every survivability model we possessed. Not even when she stood, breathing steadily, in the aftermath of what should have erased her from existence. I understood when the post-evaluation files finished loading. Because arrogance dies hardest when it is killed by something mundane. I accessed the sealed human dossier expecting, hoping, to find the missing piece. Hidden augmentations. Classified military enhancements. Some elite designation we had failed to recognize. Special forces. Experimental program. Genetic optimization. Something. Instead, the headers stared back at me, painfully ordinary. Dr. Hannah Ward. Occupation, Planetary Systems Logistics Coordinator. Assignment history, Infrastructure Planning, Disaster Response Routing, Environmental Resource Distribution. Logistics. Not combat. Not exploration command. Not even frontline research. She organized supply chains. She made sure equipment arrived where it was needed. That personnel rotations were efficient. That systems functioned under stress. I scrolled further, disbelief turning sour. Her previous postings included earthquake zones, flood-damaged coastal regions, long-term recovery efforts in areas where ecosystems had collapsed. She had coordinated evacuations under firestorms, maintained supply continuity during multi-year droughts. She did not fight disasters. She managed them. This was not a warrior. This was not even someone trained to confront danger directly. This was someone whose job existed because danger was assumed. I felt a tight, humiliating pressure behind my eyes. Humanity had not sent us a champion. They had not sent a test subject. They had sent a logistics officer. A human whose daily work involved planning around catastrophe as a matter of routine. I imagined the selection meeting on Earth. I imagined how little weight this assignment must have carried. Send Hannah. She's good with foreign systems. Low-stress posting. Give her a break from crisis zones. This was their idea of easy duty. A vacation. Training at most. The realization burned deeper than fear ever could. Because it meant that what we had witnessed was not the upper edge of human capability. It was the lower middle. I reviewed the evaluation footage again. Not the dramatic moments, not the weapon discharge, but the quiet ones. Her posture while waiting. Her calm questions. Her casual corrections to our simulations. She had never once treated us as adversaries. She had treated us like colleagues who were inexperienced. The humiliation was complete. I had escalated to prove dominance. She had endured out of politeness. I thought back to her final words before leaving the chamber. Thanks. That was actually pretty helpful. Helpful. She had learned from us. Taken notes. I realized then why she had never appeared threatened. Why she had never shown fear. Because she had never believed we were trying to kill her. From her perspective, this had been an exercise. A poorly designed one, but an exercise nonetheless. I ordered a full cross-reference with other human exchange programs. It got worse. The diplomat stationed at the Orion Accord? Former emergency room physician? The cultural attaché on Viral Prime? Disaster psychology specialist? The student attending the Kethrian Academy? Combat medic with experience in multiple conflict zones? Humanity did not send warriors because warriors were not exceptional among them. They sent support personnel. The ones who showed up after things went wrong. The ones who worked while others panicked. The ones who assumed systems would fail and planned anyway. That was when the final, unbearable truth settled into place. We had been measuring humans by what they sent. But what they sent was what they considered expendable, low priority, replaceable. And if this was the level of capability humanity deemed suitable for low-stress diplomatic exchange, I did not want to imagine what they reserved for war. I drafted my private addendum to the report, knowing it would never be circulated publicly, knowing it would likely be buried. But some truths demand to be recorded. Humanity is not dangerous because it seeks conflict. It is dangerous because it assumes catastrophe and functions anyway. They do not rise to challenges. They schedule around them. I included the mandatory doctrinal line, one that every examiner is taught, but none of us had ever truly believed until now. Humans are not built for war. War is built for humans. I stared at the words for a long time before finalizing the file. Because humiliation, true humiliation, is not being defeated. It is realizing you were never important enough to be taken seriously in the first place. Humanity had not sent us a warrior. They had sent someone who fixes things after disasters. And she had walked through our greatest threats the way one walks through light rain. Annoying, noticeable, but never worth stopping for. That was their idea of easy duty. And it left me with a certainty more terrifying than any weapon. If humanity ever decided to send its warriors, the galaxy would not receive a warning. It would receive a logistics plan. And by the time anyone understood what that meant, it would already be too late. I submitted my report that day. Not the ceremonial version. Not the one meant for archives and public reassurance. I submitted the restricted report, the kind that bypasses debate and goes straight into sealed doctrine. The kind that changes policy without ever being acknowledged as the reason. It contained no rhetoric, only conclusions. Recommendation 1. Do not threaten Earth. Threats are not warnings to humans. They are problems to be solved. Humans do not respond to intimidation with hesitation or surrender. They respond with analysis, with preparation, with quiet escalation that does not announce itself until it is complete. Every threat teaches them something, and humans learn frighteningly fast. Recommendation 2. Do not test humans. Tests imply curiosity. Curiosity invites replication. If you test a human system, they will understand it. If you stress a human limit, they will redefine it. If you deploy a weapon against a human, they will adapt to it or design around it. Humans do not treat tests as challenges. They treat them as tutorials. And whatever you do, never make them angry. Not because they will rage. Not because they will lose control. But because anger in humans does not produce chaos. It produces focus. Angry humans stop negotiating. They stop joking. They stop sending people like Hannah Ward. They send planners, engineers, specialists. They send the ones who do not ask if something can be done, only how long it will take. When that happens, there is no spectacle, no dramatic declaration, no heroic last stand. There is only execution. Efficient. Final. I added one final observation before sealing the report. Humanity is not terrifying because it is violent. The galaxy contains countless violent species. Humanity is terrifying because it is prepared. Prepared for failure. Prepared for loss. Prepared for environments that do not care whether they live or die. They evolved on a planet that never promised safety and never apologized for consequences. A planet that punished hesitation and rewarded adaptation. Earth did not make humans cruel. It made them realistic. That realism is what allowed a logistics officer to walk through our greatest threats without fear. That realism is what allowed her to treat annihilation as inconvenience. That realism is what will one day decide the fate of this galaxy. After the report was transmitted, I sat alone in the observation chamber for a long time, staring at the empty space where a human had stood. There were no scorch marks. No damage. Just silence. Somewhere beyond our borders, Earth continued to spin, storms raging, plates shifting, predators hunting, gravity pressing down without mercy. And humans lived there, adapted, thriving. The legend would spread quietly at first. Among examiners. Among commanders. Among those who had read the sealed files and understood what they meant. A legend not of conquest, but of a simple truth. Earth was classified as a death world. Humans survived it. And that made all the difference.